And welcome to Chapter 5. Here we will focus on actual infrastructure, our hardware and software components. A couple of learning objectives in terms of what we will focus on as we move through this particular chapter. When we look at a firm's IT infrastructure, we need to understand that is composed of hardware, software, data management technology, networking technology, and technology services. Many people do not think of their cell phones as computers. Yet, cell phones have powerful, energy efficient processor chips that use very little power, an operating system, and application software, including games. Of course, smartphones like iPhone, Samsung, and others truly are computer systems that are also telephone and media devices. Today's smartphones are far more powerful than the early PCs of the 1980s. The more appropriate term for smartphones is media and entertainment devices. You may want to spend some time reviewing and looking over information as it relates to client server computing because it is the dominant model of computing and has been since the 1990s. The web is a very large example of client server computing. The client server model of computing is based on inexpensive PC microprocessors. Server architecture allows data centers to scale up as needed by simply adding more servers or increasing the processing power of existing servers by moving to dual and quad core processors. Clients are the interface between system and user. In client server computing, computer processing is split between client machines and server machines linked by a network. Users interface with the client machines. A server is a physical computer. It's also the software that runs on that computer which serves user requests. The intended meaning often comes from the context in which it is used. If someone says we had to purchase a number of servers, it usually means the purchase of computers. When people say the server is down, they usually mean the computer is down. However, a web page server is also a piece of software that serves up content to users on request. In a multi tiered client server network, client requests for service are handled by different levels of servers. Corporations and even small firms usually separate the application processing, usually a database application, from the web page server function. Although not necessarily on different physical servers, often the separation does involve a separate physical server for applications. The cost of digital storage has fallen exponentially along with the cost of computing. Today, a 32 gigabyte USB flash drive costs about 12 bucks. You might ask what impact this might have on the amount of digital information stored in corporations. How many gigabytes of information do you think you use to store photos, music, videos, podcasts, and other digital material? On average, American households consumed an estimated 190 gigabytes of digital information per month. Can you imagine yourselves consuming that much digital information? Think about making a list of the digital information sources that you use in a day. Try to estimate how large the files are that you routinely use for music, video, advertising, browsing the web, and using search engines. The biggest digital files are most likely video files. Think about how you use your cell phones. Are you listening to online radio stations, streaming music and videos, or mostly just texting? Do you shop? Buy? What do you buy? Digital goods, retail goods like at Amazon? Who uses an app to make a purchase? Think about how the mobile platform might influence how a business is run or even how it's managed. Nanotubes are tiny tubes about 10,000 times thinner than a human hair. They consist of rolled up sheets of carbon hexagons and have potential uses as minuscule wires or in ultra small electronic devices and are very powerful conductors of electrical current. Nanotechnology is the study of the controlling of matter on an atomic and molecular scale. Generally, nanotechnology deals with structures of the size 100 nanometers or smaller. Nanotechnology is used to create transistors of the tiny size previously mentioned. Can you think of any other applications of this type of technology? For example, specifically in the medical field. Both grid computing and cloud computing allow organizations to optimize their use of resources in new ways. Grid computing allows corporations to take advantage of spare computing power in the form of networked virtual supercomputers, and cloud computing allows organizations to avoid the expenses of maintaining their own hardware and software, relying on public and private cloud computers. The diagram illustrates a cloud with different cloud computing devices presented around its outline as servers, desktops, iPad, iPhone, and laptops. The cloud comprises different cloud computing services as follows: platform services, block storage, communication networks, identity management, and content servers. Application services, content management, enterprise software, collaboration environments, and process management. And finally, infrastructure services, computing resource management, network management, and storage management. Amazon Web Services, AWS, is a collection of web services that Amazon provides to users of its cloud platform. AWS now offers over 90 services and is the largest provider of public cloud based services. The circular diagram illustrates the 9 major Amazon Web Services: analytics, computing, networking, content delivery, data storage, database, deployment, management, and application services. Today's chips are much more power efficient than in the past, but still require cooling fans in PCs and laptops. Smartphones do not have fans, but heat sinks to dissipate the processor heat to the frame of the phone. According to a study by the National Resources Defense Council, all data centers in the US consume more than 91 billion kilowatt hours a year in 2019, or about 34 power plants putting out 500 megawatts each. Large, mega-sized cloud centers consume only 5% of this load and are the most efficient forms of computing. The problem is the 95% of smaller data centers that are very inefficient. Multi-core processors are the major way computer manufacturers today can increase speed and power. When all processing is done by a single chip, power leakage and heat increase as processor speed is increased. These limitations are avoided by spreading the load across two or more processors operating at lower speeds, but which together can get the job done faster than a single high-speed chip. The relationship between the system software, application software, and users can be illustrated by a series of nested boxes. System software, consisting of operating systems, language translators, and utility programs, controls access to the hardware. Application software, including programming languages and software packages, must work through the system software to operate. The user interacts primarily with the application software. You might wonder why a Microsoft application like Word cannot be installed on both PCs and Macintosh computers. Why is it that users are forced to buy different software application software for different devices? A part of the answer is the close interdependency of hardware, operating systems, and application software. Internet-based software, such as Office 365, avoids this issue by enabling web browser access to the software. Operating systems create the user interface, like a smartphone OS, Windows, or Macintosh OS. This interface has evolved from a text command interface to a graphical user interface, or GUI, driven either by a mouse pointer or touchscreen interfaces. Many do not know their cell phone has an operating system. On the Blackboard, managing those resources is one function of the operating system, along with creating the user interface. Java and the Java Virtual Machine is ubiquitous across the web. It is useful because it allows developers to write an application once in Java and then be assured it will work on any Java-enabled device. Although Microsoft applications are found on more than 80% of the world's billion computers, the news in this area is the growth of open source and free desktop applications. Although online, on-demand apps like Google Apps and OpenOffice are growing in marketplace acceptance, most users continue to buy Microsoft software. Why do you think that is the case? Here, we look at information as it relates to HTML and the next evolution of HTML, HTML5. Web services is an approach to building enterprise applications. Web services is a messaging system which allows diverse computing applications in a firm to communicate data with one another without extensive integration of the constituent applications. In a service-oriented architecture, Various applications provide services or data on request to other applications needing data. SOA, Service on Oriented Architecture, is a major alternative to rebuilding large-scale legacy enterprise systems. It's important to note that SOA is a method of developing infrastructure using web services with an eye toward creating applications that draw data from several underlying or usually older programs. All programs are built or redesigned to provide certain information to all other programs. With SOA, developers incorporate each individual service into an application that successfully meets the needs of the specific organization. The diagram illustrates web services interlinked to different systems, namely Southwest Airlines system, tour operator systems, travel reservation system, wireless website, and future business partner system. The web server is further interconnected to server, which is further interconnected to legacy reservation system. The server and legacy reservation system are together labeled as dollar rent-a-car systems. The interconnection between the servers is denoted by double-headed arrows. Dollar Rent-A-Car uses web services to provide a standard intermediate layer of software to talk to other companies' information systems. Dollar Rent-A-Car can use this set of web services to link to other companies' information systems without having to build a separate link to each firm's systems. When you think about Apple and Android, they have about 1.5 million apps each, and so roughly a total of 3 million apps. How many apps do you have on your phone? The average is about 23 apps per phone. I know I have a lot more than 23. The top 10 apps account for 90% of the usage. Facebook alone accounts for 50% of user smartphone time. One of the problems that firms face is the holidays, when user demand for online services explodes, but then recedes after the holidays to a normal background level. Firms are forced to buy additional infrastructure to handle peak loads, which then sits idle after the holiday is over. One solution is to use cloud-based services to handle the peak loads of the firm, essentially renting extra capacity as needed. This solves the peak load problem and a part of the scalability problem. With cloud computing services, you expand as needed without huge financial outlays. Many think of the cost of computing as the cost of the computer and the software. Here, we look at all of those costs which are involved in the total cost of ownership model. One common answer to reducing the cost of computing hardware and software is to move the work offshore to low-wage countries. Thousands of US and European firms outsource their maintenance programming work to low-wage countries. Even more firms outsource programming, systems analysis and design, and consulting work to onshore domestic firms. Nevertheless, computer and network jobs are abundant in the US in part because more systems are being built than ever before, in part because building systems is less expensive than ever. As the cost of developing systems decline, the demand for systems grows stronger. The productivity gains that can be created by providing smartphones to employees can be reduced when employees use them for shopping and other non business purposes. Companies often review phone logs of individual company phones to ensure employees are using them for business purposes. This is not possible with individually owned smartphones. If you are operating in a global environment, you can't assume your employees will be able to understand English interfaces. As interesting niche businesses is software translation service. Think about how these types of services are so critical in today's world. Next, we will pick up in Chapter 6.